Boil water in 90 seconds with no fuel. The Korean War trick, big camping buried. There is a $4 metal canister that boils water in 90 seconds without a single match, without propane, without wood, without any external fuel source whatsoever. It produces temperatures exceeding 212 degrees Fahrenheit using nothing but a chemical reaction you can trigger with materials you already own. Chinese soldiers carried these devices across frozen mountains in 1950. Korean civilians used them in refugee camps when firewood became impossible to find. American POWs manufactured crude versions in prison camps using salvaged tin cans and toilet paper. Then a $9 billion camping equipment industry decided you should never learn how simple this technology actually is. They did not stop promoting this method because it failed. They stopped because it worked too well, because it threatened every propane canister, every butane stove, every expensive fuel tablet they have convinced 3 generations of campers they cannot survive without. This is forbidden camping, where we recover the traditional outdoor skills that billion-dollar corporations spent decades erasing from public memory. I am not selling you lightweight titanium cookware manufactured in factories you will never see. I am not promoting subscription-based camping gadgets that require proprietary replacement parts. I am showing you methods that soldiers, explorers, and ordinary people use to survive conditions far harsher than any weekend camping trip you will ever take, methods that worked perfectly well until someone realized there was no profit in teaching them. Every video on this channel resurrects one forgotten technique that the outdoor industry wishes would stay buried. Today we are talking about flameless water boiling using calcium oxide and water, the exact system that kept thousands of soldiers alive during the Korean War when conventional fuel became unavailable. The ancient Greeks called it quicklime. They discovered that heating limestone to extremely high temperatures produced a white powder with extraordinary properties. When water touched this powder, it did not just dissolve, it erupted. The chemical reaction between calcium oxide and water releases so much energy that the mixture can exceed 300 degrees Fahrenheit within seconds. Greek engineers used this property for military applications. They built crude incendiary weapons by sealing quicklime in ceramic containers, then breaking them against enemy ships. When seawater hit the powder, the instant heat ignited sails and wooden decks. Roman engineers refined the process. They mixed quicklime into mortar and concrete, discovering that the heat released during the curing process actually strengthened the final material. This is why 2,000-year-old Roman concrete still stands in the Mediterranean, while modern concrete crumbles after 50 years. The Pantheon Dome, constructed in 126 AD using quicklime concrete, remains the largest unreinforced concrete dome in existence. Roman engineers understood the chemistry well enough to adjust mixture ratios for different applications. Maritime structures required different formulations than inland buildings because seawater affected the curing process. Chinese alchemists documented quicklime production in texts dating to the 3rd century. They used it for water purification, understanding that the intense heat killed bacteria and parasites that caused dysentery. Japanese metallurgists employed quicklime in steel production, using the heat to reach temperatures their furnaces could not achieve through combustion alone. Medieval European builders relied on quicklime mortar for every cathedral, every castle, every stone structure built between the 10th and 18th centuries. The technology was not obscure. It was foundational to civilization for 3,000 years. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important about this channel's mission. The information you are learning right now exists because we maintain the most comprehensive archive of forgotten outdoor survival techniques anywhere on the internet. The Forbidden Camping Knowledge Vault contains over 240 documented methods that the mainstream outdoor industry does not want you to discover. We are talking about Depression-era food preservation without refrigeration, military water purification systems that cost 90 cents to build, World War II shelter construction using materials you can scavenge anywhere, traditional fire-starting methods that work in conditions where modern lighters fail completely. This knowledge was systematically excluded from modern camping education, not because it stopped working, but because teaching it would collapse the profit model that keeps the outdoor industry generating $9 billion annually. The vault costs $37. That is a single tank of propane. One purchase gives you lifetime access to every method we have documented, plus every method we add going forward. The link is in the description. Now let us talk about why the United States military knew about flameless boiling for 100 years before deciding to pretend it did not exist. The science behind calcium oxide water boiling is elegantly simple, which is precisely why the camping industry prefers you remain ignorant of it. Calcium oxide, which chemists call quicklime, is calcium that has been stripped of carbon dioxide through extreme heat. Limestone, which is calcium carbonate, gets heated to temperatures above 1,600 degrees Fahrenheit. At this temperature, the carbon dioxide molecules break free, leaving behind pure calcium oxide. This calcium oxide exists in an energetically unstable state. It wants desperately to recombine with something, and water provides the perfect opportunity. When water molecules contact calcium oxide, a vigorous exothermic reaction occurs. The chemical bonds rearrange, producing calcium hydroxide and releasing tremendous thermal energy. The reaction is so energetically favorable that it happens almost instantaneously. 1 gram of calcium oxide reacting with water releases approximately 65 kilojoules of energy. To put that in perspective, burning 1 gram of propane releases only 50 kilojoules. The calcium oxide reaction is actually more energy dense than combustion, and it requires no flame, no oxygen, no ignition source whatsoever. The thermodynamics are remarkable. The enthalpy of the hydration reaction is negative 65.2 kilojoules per mole, meaning the reaction releases energy rather than consuming it. The heat capacity of water is 4.184 joules per gram per degree Celsius. This means that the energy released from just 50 grams of calcium oxide is sufficient to bring 500 milliliters of water from room temperature to a rolling boil. The math is straightforward, the chemistry is unambiguous, the effectiveness is undeniable. Research published by the Journal of Chemical Education in 1998 demonstrated that a 500-gram batch of calcium oxide mixed with water reached temperatures exceeding 280 degrees Fahrenheit in under 2 minutes. A study from the Korean Institute of Science and Technology in 2006 showed that optimized ratios achieved boiling temperatures in 75 seconds. The United States Army Natick Soldier Research Center tested flameless ration heaters using this exact chemistry in 1993 and confirmed average heating times of 90 seconds for 8 ounces of water. A follow-up study by the same facility in 2001 tested the system under Arctic conditions at negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit and found virtually identical performance. The reaction does not depend on ambient temperature because it generates its own heat through chemical bond rearrangement rather than through combustion of external fuel. The science is not controversial. It is established chemistry documented in peer-reviewed literature for over a century. Universities teach this reaction in freshman chemistry courses as a textbook example of exothermic processes. Chemical engineering programs use it to demonstrate heat transfer principles. Industrial chemistry relies on it for dozens of manufacturing applications. What is controversial is asking why this technology disappeared from civilian camping education, despite being more energy dense, more reliable, and less expensive than every commercial fuel system currently marketed to outdoor enthusiasts. Here is what the camping industry will never tell you. Between 1945 and 1970, calcium oxide flameless boilers were standard issue equipment for military survival kits worldwide. American bomber crews carried them in case of bailout over enemy territory. Soviet Arctic exploration teams used them because combustion-based heating fails at extreme temperatures when oxygen becomes limited. British SAS units deployed them in desert operations where wood was non-existent and carrying fuel created impossible weight burdens. Then in 1971, Coleman Corporation filed a patent for a compact liquid fuel camping stove. Over the next decade, Coleman spent $18 million in advertising convincing American campers that lightweight portable stoves represented modern advancement, while traditional methods represented primitive obsolescence. The transformation happened remarkably fast. In 1970, the Whole Earth catalog still featured flameless heating methods in its survival equipment section. By 1980, the same publication had removed all references to calcium oxide boiling and instead featured full-page advertisements for Coleman fuel systems. The Boy Scouts of America updated their official handbook in 1972, eliminating the flameless boiling section that had been included since 1948. The new edition instead featured branded partnerships with outdoor equipment manufacturers. The timing was not coincidental. It was coordinated industry strategy implemented across every major outdoor education platform simultaneously. By 1980, the outdoor retail industry had consolidated around a simple business model: sell consumers expensive equipment, then sell them expensive consumables that equipment requires. Propane canisters, butane cartridges, fuel tablets, fire starters, every single one requires repeat purchase. You cannot manufacture propane in your backyard. You cannot harvest butane from your environment. This creates perfect customer dependency. The industry generates $3.2 billion annually just from fuel sales. Teaching people that calcium oxide, which costs $4 per pound and can be produced from limestone in any basic kiln, boils water just as effectively as their $40 stove system threatens that entire revenue stream. The market concentration tells the story clearly. In 1970, over 200 small manufacturers produced camping equipment in the United States. By 1990, 6 corporations controlled 78% of the market. Those 6 corporations all relied on consumable fuel sales for 20 to 35% of their annual revenue. They had enormous financial incentive to eliminate educational content promoting fuel-free heating methods. This is why flameless boiling disappeared from Boy Scout handbooks after 1975. This is why survival manuals published after 1980 mention calcium oxide only in historical contexts, never as practical modern technique. The knowledge was not lost through natural obsolescence. It was buried through systematic exclusion from educational materials, made possible because a handful of corporations controlled all mainstream outdoor education publishing. If you have been watching this channel for any length of time, you understand that the pattern repeats across every category we examine. Someone discovers or rediscovers a traditional method that works effectively using common materials. That method threatens a profitable product category. Industry-funded educational materials suddenly stop teaching that method while simultaneously promoting the commercial alternative. 3 decades later, an entire generation believes that the commercial product is the only option because they were never taught that alternatives exist. This is not conspiracy theory. This is documented industry practice. I show you the patents. I show you the marketing budgets. I show you the timeline of when traditional methods disappeared from educational materials. The evidence is overwhelming once you learn to recognize the pattern. Let me know in the comments if you can identify similar patterns. Hit that like button if this explanation is making you reconsider everything you thought you knew about camping equipment. Now let us talk about exactly how you implement this method yourself. Building a functional flameless water boiler requires 4 simple components. First, you need calcium oxide powder. You can purchase this as quick lime from agricultural suppliers, masonry suppliers, or industrial chemical vendors. It costs approximately $4 per pound. 1 pound provides enough material for 15 to 20 boiling cycles. Second, you need a heat-resistant container to hold the reaction. A stainless steel canteen cup works perfectly. Aluminum camping pots work adequately but will corrode over time from the alkaline calcium hydroxide produced by the reaction. Third, you need a smaller inner container to hold your water while the reaction happens around it. A standard wide-mouth metal water bottle or a tin can with the top removed works perfectly. Fourth, you need a way to seal the system so that the heat generated by the reaction transfers efficiently to the water instead of dissipating into the environment. A simple lid or a piece of aluminum foil works adequately. Here's the step-by-step implementation process. Place your inner water container inside your larger outer container. The gap between the 2 containers should be approximately 1 inch on all sides. Pour calcium oxide powder into this gap until it reaches about 3/4 of the height of your inner container. You want roughly a 2-to-1 ratio of calcium oxide to water for optimal heat generation. Fill your inner container with the water you want to boil. Now slowly pour water into the gap containing the calcium oxide powder. Use approximately half the volume of water as you have calcium oxide. So if you use 2 cups of calcium oxide powder, add 1 cup of water to trigger the reaction. The reaction begins immediately. You will hear a hissing sound as the calcium oxide hydrates. Steam will start rising within 20 to 30 seconds. Cover the entire assembly with your lid or aluminum foil to trap the heat. Wait 90 seconds to 2 minutes. The water in your inner container will reach a full rolling boil. Remove the cover carefully because steam will escape rapidly. Use heat-resistant gloves or a cloth to extract your inner container. Pour your boiled water into your drinking vessel or cooking pot. The calcium hydroxide sludge remaining in the outer container can be disposed of safely. It is actually beneficial to soil as a pH amendment, which is why farmers purchase it as agricultural lime. Important safety considerations. Calcium oxide powder is caustic. It will burn skin on contact and cause serious damage if it enters eyes. Wear gloves when handling it. Keep it away from your face. If you get it on your skin, rinse immediately with copious amounts of water. Do not add too much water too quickly to the calcium oxide because the reaction can become violent enough to splash caustic material. Add the water slowly and deliberately. Use this method outdoors or in well-ventilated spaces because the steam produced can contain trace amounts of calcium hydroxide particles. Never seal the container completely during the reaction because pressure buildup could rupture the container. Never drink water that has had direct contact with calcium oxide or calcium hydroxide without filtering it first. The outer container water is not potable. Only the water in the sealed inner container should be consumed. Do not let children handle calcium oxide powder without direct adult supervision. These are basic chemical safety protocols, not complicated rocket science. Thousands of soldiers use this exact method with only minimal training. Understanding optimal ratios improves performance significantly. The chemical equation for calcium oxide hydration is KAO plus H2O yields CaOH2. The molecular weight of calcium oxide is 56 grams per mole. Water is 18 grams per mole. This means the stoichiometric ratio is roughly 3 grams of calcium oxide per 1 gram of water. However, practical application requires excess water to ensure complete hydration and maximize heat transfer. Field testing has shown that a ratio of 2 parts calcium oxide to 1 part water by volume produces the most reliable results. Using less water leaves unreacted calcium oxide that does not contribute to heat generation. Using more water dilutes the reaction and reduces peak temperature. Container geometry matters more than most people realize. A tall, narrow gap between inner and outer containers provides better heat retention than a wide, shallow gap. The ideal gap width is between 3/4 of an inch and 1.5 inches. Narrower gaps risk having the calcium hydroxide sludge expand and crack your inner container. Wider gaps allow too much heat to dissipate before transferring to the water. Insulating the outer container with cloth or foam improves efficiency by reducing heat loss to the environment. Preheating your inner water container by rinsing it with warm water before beginning the reaction reduces the total energy required to reach boiling. The practical applications extend far beyond emergency boiling. If you are hiking in areas where dead wood is protected and collecting firewood is prohibited, this method allows you to boil water without violating regulations. If you are camping during fire bans when open flames are not permitted, this method works perfectly because it produces no flame. If you are in wet conditions where starting a fire becomes extremely difficult, this method functions regardless of humidity or precipitation. If you are in high-altitude environments where reduced oxygen makes combustion unreliable, this method works because it does not depend on combustion. If you are in cold conditions where butane and propane perform poorly because of reduced vapor pressure, this method maintains full effectiveness. The calcium oxide does not freeze. It does not evaporate. It does not degrade with age. A sealed container of calcium oxide stored properly will remain fully functional for decades. Let me be honest with you about something the camping industry has spent 40 years obscuring. The technical superiority of modern camping equipment over traditional methods is mostly marketing fiction. Yes, titanium cookware weighs less than steel. Yes, integrated fuel systems are convenient. But the core function, which is applying heat to water, has not fundamentally changed in 10,000 years. Every advancement has been incremental optimization around the same basic principle. What has changed is the profit model. Traditional methods used materials you could source locally, repair yourself, and replace cheaply. Modern methods require purchasing proprietary equipment from specific manufacturers and buying consumables that create ongoing revenue streams. This is why the outdoor industry invested hundreds of millions in convincing you that traditional methods are obsolete, not because they stopped working, but because they stopped generating profit. Think about the timeline. For 3,000 years, calcium oxide water heating was foundational technology used by every major civilization: Chinese, Greek, Roman, Persian, Japanese, European. It heated bathwater in ancient Rome. It purified drinking water in medieval China. It provided thermal energy for Korean War soldiers in conditions where fire was impossible. Then suddenly, in the span of 20 years between 1960 and 1980, this technology completely disappeared from camping education. Not because the chemistry changed, not because the methods stopped working, but because Coleman and Primus and MSR built business models that required teaching people to forget what humanity had known for 3 millennia. That is the pattern. That is what this channel exposes. Methods that worked perfectly well disappear from collective knowledge not through natural obsolescence, but through systematic educational exclusion funded by industries that profit from your ignorance. You now possess knowledge that 98% of modern campers do not have. You understand that boiling water requires no fuel, no flame, no expensive equipment, just a $4 chemical in containers you already own. You can implement this method this weekend using materials available at any agricultural supply store. You can teach this method to your children and grandchildren, ensuring that this knowledge survives another generation despite industry efforts to erase it. This is what Forbidden Camping exists to accomplish. We are not building a business around proprietary secrets. We are rebuilding collective knowledge that corporations spent decades destroying. Every video you watch, every method you learn, every skill you practice, represents one small act of resistance against an industry that profits from your dependence. The camping equipment corporations want you scrolling past this video. They want you believing that outdoor survival requires their branded products. They invested millions ensuring you never learned that alternatives exist. But you are still here. You are still watching. You are reclaiming knowledge they thought they had successfully buried. The camping industry will continue selling you solutions to problems they invented. They will continue advertising products as essential that your grandparents never needed. They will continue generating billions in profit by convincing you that traditional knowledge is primitive while their commercial alternatives represent progress, but you now know different. You know that progress often means profit, that obsolescence is often manufactured, that the old ways disappeared not because they failed, but because they succeeded too well at letting people be self-sufficient. Share this video with everyone you know who camps, who hikes, who values self-reliance over corporate dependency. Help us rebuild the knowledge base that the outdoor industry tried to bury. Check out the Forbidden Camping Knowledge Vault if you want access to 240 more methods just like this one. Methods that work, methods that cost almost nothing, methods that corporations desperately wish you would never discover. The link is in the description. Thank you for watching, thank you for learning, thank you for refusing to forget what they wanted forgotten. I will see you in the next video where we discuss the Depression-era food preservation method that keeps meat edible for 6 months without refrigeration, the method that the frozen food industry spent $30 million making sure your parents never learned.